seat.
I'll show you later.
It's funny. I love it too, the arrow going down.
You good? If we could reconvene our meeting to open session, the board has been in executive session since 6 o'clock to discuss personnel matter, 3 contractual matters, and 2 legal matters. If we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We could have introductions.
Dave Hurst.
Catherine Nadeau.
John Walston.
Willow Bear.
Jody Monroe?
Holly Dellenbaugh.
Ewan McNain.
Robert Tejan.
John McPhillips.
And do we have any PIG students with us tonight? Welcome, thanks for coming. Your obligation is to stay until 9 o'clock or when the meeting is over, whichever one comes first. When the meeting is done, there are sign-out sheets up here. Make sure to sign out before you leave so that you get credit for being here. First up on the agenda is the approval of minutes. It is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approve the minutes from the November 15th, 2023 regular board meeting. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries. Item 3, meeting reports. First up is our superintendent's report.
Sure, thank you. The only thing I wanted to follow up on is at our last board meeting, we revisited the walking distance for transportation given the driver shortage, and there were some follow-up questions the board had. So John put together a couple follow-up slides here to review this. And Ellen is here, our new director of transportation, if you have specific questions. We met the other day to talk about some other options that we could consider as well. So I'm going to turn it over to John.
Thank you, Jody. Just as a refresher from our board meeting in November, we highlighted that the school district is not necessarily immune to the transportation shortages, particularly with regard to bus drivers and monitors. The district has roughly 70 full-time equivalent positions for bus drivers for 70 available routes, but we've only been able to maintain a driver roster of approximately 50 to 52 drivers consistently over the course of the past 2 school years. That results in longer bus rides, more crowded buses, behavioral issues on the buses because those buses are so full. So Jody and the board had asked the Business Office and Transportation to evaluate and research opportunities to address those challenges. The current walking distance for all schools is 1/10 of a mile, and what we looked at particularly was the impact of moving walking distances to 0.5 miles or a half mile for elementary schools, a mile for the middle school, and a mile and a half for the high school. So I just want to give a quick summary of the maps by individual schools in terms of what that impact of those mileage distances are. This is for the Eagle Elementary School, Ellesmere. Each layer is sort of overlaid. Glenmont, Hammergrill, Slingerlands, the middle school, and the high school. One of the follow-up questions specifically associated with the last presentation was, well, what's the impact in terms of both eligible students, ridership by school? So what we looked at was by elementary school, you can see the eligible students that would be impacted at 0.1 mile, a half mile, 3/4 of a mile, and 1 mile, and what that looks like in terms of percentage of eligible ridership. The real trigger point for at least the elementary school was the 1 mile mark because of the number of impacted students to actually decrease the number of buses to make a meaningful gain in terms of the driver shortage. So at 1 mile, there's 34 students that would be impacted at roughly almost 11% of eligible ridership. Ellesmere and Hammergrill, because of their footprint within the town and the school district, their impact is greater in terms of eligible students. And Glenmont and Slingerlands are roughly on par with each other. So overall, at a mile distance for the elementary school, it would impact 330 eligible riders, which represents just about 27% of the total eligible riders for the elementary school in total. For the middle school, 783 eligible students at a mile distance would decrease anywhere between 2 to 3 buses for a impacted ridership of 22.5%. And the high school, just again, given where it's located in that portion of the school district, 81 students would be impacted if we were to increase to 1.5 miles, which is roughly 8% of the eligible ridership. The challenge the district has presently is these are really estimates based on the information that we have available now on the current ridership and routes that exist. So the only way to truly get a absolute degree of certainty is to unpack the entire routing of the district and reformulate it based on these thresholds. Overall, it's 330, again, on the Ellesmere side. Given the proportion of that impact and the challenges from the community and parents, we have to determine whether or not this is the best path forward. So we did take an opportunity to look at some additional alternatives. This may still at some point come to a decision point, but I think there are opportunities for the district to research other alternatives. And Ellen Dorado, our transportation supervisor and director, will be able to speak to those in a little bit more certainty. The current mileage for all of the schools is at 1/10 of a mile. We actually looked at, well, what if we were even to make a nominal change to 2/10 of a mile, what would that impact look like? And again, to really sort of plan that out, it's challenging. So we did take a look at 2 routes in particular, specifically at Hammergrill, just because we were here and it's one of the closer districts, and Ellen can speak to what that actual impact was.
Okay, so we took 2 routes. When John says 1/10 of a mile across the district, it's really 1/10 of a mile at the elementary level. So I took a look at Hammergrill and maybe a less aggressive path, or maybe another option for us. And so we have the elementary students walking out to 1/10 of a mile. If we had the elementary students walking out to 2/10 of a mile, which isn't really a long way, we can basically cut our routes in half stop-wise. And we can shave probably, when I looked at the 2 in Hammergrill, and like John says, you have to unpack the district, so I had to take it down to pay dirt, put everyone back at their houses, and then put them to 0.1 mile, but then put them to 2/10 of a mile. So the 2 routes that I looked at here in Hammergrill, there were 26 and 28 stops. When I went to 2/10 of a mile, I cut those stops in half, which was pretty remarkable. Also, with every stop, our routing software generates a computer-generated time of about 30 seconds per stop. So it's 5-second delay, 2 stop, 15 seconds to load. Now, we know that that's not on target. I think that maybe it goes a little bit longer than 30 seconds for each stop. But it does add up. So those 2 routes that we broke in half actually shaved off about 6 minutes on one and 9 minutes on the other. So if we were to go down this avenue, it could segue into a future plan. For instance, if we had buses coming and it took 9 minutes to complete the route, and they could maybe come to Hammergrill, drop off, and go back and get the other. Or another possibility could be if other drivers were coming back into the district from private and parochial school drop-offs, they could come back into the district, maybe swing through and grab another 3 stops and get everybody here within a reasonable time. And we're not counting on people to watch our students or corralling them. You know, we would have to corral them, but it might be in that window. So that's the finding so far.
Thanks, Ellen. And when we discuss these, you know, looking at the real savings, I guess, and looking at decreasing busing, you really have to look to almost a mile, and I don't think that that's something the board really wants to consider if we can avoid it. That's a long ways for
Yeah.
elementary students. So looking at a 2/10 of a mile, which would still require a community vote because it's a change in the threshold. That is what many districts use, and if we are still struggling with a driver shortage, it would allow, as Ellen pointed out, the ability for a little more flexibility, cutting down the ride times, which have increased because of the number of kids on the buses, because we are filling them at the elementary level. The other thing that I know Ellen spoke about was looking at working with some of the other districts near us to see if there's a way we can share some transportation for maybe some of the private or parochial or special ed runs, if there's a way to partner and do that. So I think those are some areas that we can explore further.
Catherine, good question.
Yeah, I'm not sure who I'm directing the question to, but when we're talking about looking at minimizing steps, are we also looking at like, hey, can we just ask these 3 houses to walk 5 houses further so that we've got stops more spaced out? Is
Right,
that-
we
yeah,
talked
yeah.
about even doing that for
Yeah.
the middle and high school, trying to have more centralized stops
Right, right.
within the distance we have. The 1/10 of a mile is very restrictive for the elementary, so if we could go to 2/10 of a mile, that would allow a little more flexibility at that level.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Can you speak to, like, the maps for the different schools? Because you would think that it should just be like the school is the center and there's a circle around it, but it obviously doesn't look that way. It looks very, like a funny
Butterflies.
shape.
Yeah. Oh, you're a little more familiar with the.
Well, and trying to do the walkout from the school, it would be where the people are and not, it would be a boundary around the concentration of people, but not necessarily the distance that the crow would fly. Am I saying that right?
It's not like a circle, it has to be a
Right.
route where the roads
So
are.
you have to go by the roads. And I bring it up in
Yes.
part because I know we've had a couple questions from the community about them. So you have to measure your distance by the streets themselves.
Exactly. And also you have to also take into consideration, you know, working on the roads or dark areas or, you know, no sidewalks, 4-lane highways, high-speed limits.
And it does look, for example, Hammerville seems to be pushed a little bit northwest. You gotta realize that you're looking at one district and the individual elementary maps come into play in terms of where their locations are as well. So it's not as easily as like, okay, we're gonna take Hammergirl or pick your elementary school and do a sort of bullseye approach at the 3 different mileage markers, because you may be bleeding into either Ellesmere's geographical border or Eagle's geographical border. So what's not sort of shown here is where those other school districts lie on the Hammergirl map, because we were trying our best to give at least a visual representation of the streets roughly that would be impacted at those 3 demarcation points.
Kathy?
I think that makes perfect sense. However, I also know that rules and regulations don't always line up with perfect sense as perfectly. So is it allowed under, I mean, we're talking about going out to a vote to comply with state law, which says that we have to be very specific about the distance from the school. Does state law give us the flexibility to determine that that distance is not, in fact, as the crow flies, but rather where the people are and the roads are and where the busing is?
How you calculate the distance, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is that
That's-
flexibility is built into state law?
flexibility?
I think
That's
it's required.
Not-
That's my, but
Yeah,
that's
it's
the way it's
required.
written? Okay.
Yeah. Like, you can't, when we looked at, for example, the high school, you could see where a lot of students could cut across the back fields, right?
Right.
And it would be less, but that's not the way you can calculate the distance under this. You have to use it by the actual roads or in our sidewalks in that distance.
Sure, I was just making sure that, like, again, that if we're doing this to comply with state law, that
Yes.
the law recognizes the, right.
Right. Okay.
Because we would be under the state maximum distance, even at the 0.2 of a mile, I just want to emphasize that that would be a ballot proposition for May, should the district decide to move that. So I know that there were some additional questions in terms of, would there be an opportunity to work with CDTA? Ellen has made contact with her colleague in CDTA. That is an option, although the CDTA runs and routes are somewhat limited in terms of the town, in terms of your Kenwood Avenue, your Cherry Ave.
Delaware.
Delaware Ave and Ellesmere Ave.
Limited.
They're not going to wind up doing some of the spots or off those main avenues to be able to pick up ridership. We also looked at opportunities for consolidated stops more in your rural areas, because it's not necessarily a half mile, or whatever walking distance you choose, whether it's a half mile or a mile, it's not necessarily from the school to home. It can be from a spot to home. So there may be opportunities in your more rural districts to pick a centralized location and have students either walk or be dropped off at that centralized location for a bus or two to come and pick those kids up at that point, and then subsequently transport to school.
Does anyone have any other questions? We're going to continue to do some work on options, and we'll come back to the board with, what we're thinking we want to move forward with. That works. Okay.
Thanks for
Thank
running
you.
all the different options.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I had for my report.
Okay. Any questions for Jody? All right. Next up is the board report. First, I just wanted to remind everybody that the Theater Without a Net is performing Clue at the high school this coming weekend on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I encourage everybody to go and bring your friends. I just very briefly wanted to put out there, I know that we've had a lot of athletes doing a lot of great things. I think we're going to officially recognize them at our next meeting when we're back at the high school. But just so that you guys don't think that we forgot about them. And then the last thing that I wanted to bring up, we had a policy committee meeting since our last meeting, hence the policies that are up for a first read on the agenda. But one of the things that came up during our discussion in our policy committee meeting was that the district has been charging admission fees only for boys football, boys hockey, and boys basketball games. We were talking about, whether that was necessary, why we were doing that, and would propose that we move to not charging for those games so that everybody feels like they can come and attend. And we just wanted to raise that with the entire board to make sure everybody was okay with making that change. And I believe you talked with Len about it, and he's,
Yeah, I spoke with Len about it, and he was fine doing that, and it's a really less operational work for him, and it allows everyone to come in who wants to come in.
Do we know how much money that results in?
Yeah, not a lot, $25,000, I think, in total, 29,000,
Annually?
29,000?
About 20,000.
$20,000.
Is that gonna turn into an additional $20,000 athletics request every year?
It goes to the general fund, it doesn't go back to athletics.
so just wanted to make sure people are, Catherine, did you want to?
Yeah, and I was just gonna say, as part of the policy committee, I supported 115%, and part of the reason for supporting it as well is because we wouldn't want to create the impression that some sports or athletics are valued more than others, and that therefore we're charging for some and not others. And it makes good sense to both open it up to make sure that there are no barriers for anybody attending, and also making sure that the community knows, at least from my perspective, part of the reason I support it is to make sure that the community knows that all of the different programs are valued.
So are we talking, I'm sorry, is the new policy that nobody can charge?
Well, there's no policy related to it. It came up, what was the policy?
came up
Petty
in
cash.
connection with petty cash.
But there's actually no policy on collecting money for
It's just something that
admissions.
the
It's just something
athletics
we've been
department
doing.
has been doing.
Yeah.
'Cause we charge for
Tradition, if you will.
plays,
Right, that's,
but not
But the
concerts, and some
plays-
sports, but not all sports.
right. And the theater productions are co-curricular, and they have to raise money to fund the performances,
Right.
the costumes and all of that. The athletics does not use
It's not
that
being
in
used the
turn
same
for
way.
that. So
Gotcha.
that was the rationale.
Okay. Makes sense.
Any other questions, or anybody have anything else that they wanted to share? Ewan?
So I have one comment on the policies, but we'll do that when we discuss the policies. The other thing I wanted to point out, and I raised it with the board, briefly, some of you may have seen the New York Times profile on the somewhat dramatic effects often on brain health and mental health of early contact sports. And I know it's, an issue that's been increasingly receiving attention at professional level and so on. There's now a pretty clear correlation between early exposure to contact sports, which mostly means football, and subsequent damage to brain health and mental health. There's a huge rise and positive correlation between risk of suicide and mental health in teens and 20s and the early exposure to contact sports. I'm not, saying I have a solution here, right? I think it's a really important conversation for us and for the whole school community to have about the role of football in students' lives versus the potential damage to their entire brain health for the rest of their lives. That I think really needs to be recognized and discussed rather than not discussed.
Next up are our student reports. Do we have anybody here from the high school student senate?
Hi, I'm Amelia. I'm the Secretary of Senate. This month at the high school, we had a big dodgeball tournament, which was very fun. We also have been working on the Caring and Sharing food drive, and we're planning a large winter event for before break. So, yeah.
Thank you, and thank you for reminding me, actually, I meant to mention as a reminder to everybody about the Caring and Sharing food drive, the drop-off, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's a drop-off at the high school on Friday morning
Yeah, I think so.
from, I think, 9 to 11? Is that
Yeah, I'm not
correct?
quite sure, but that sounds right.
Okay, all right, so I encourage everybody to drop off food.
And actually related to that, I'm reminded by your reminder, there's also a holiday toy and game drive right now. So I know we have a big pile at home that are going to go in on Friday, but that's also
Okay.
being collected.
And then, many of the elementary schools are also running individual food drives, I believe hats, mittens as well, so people can keep their eyes out. There's lots of opportunities to show the community, show our generosity as a district.
So, thank you, Amelia.
Thank
And for the
you.
reminder. Do we have anyone from the middle school here tonight?
Hi, my name is Ann Hu. I'm in 7th grade Hudson. And just as a few reminders, at BCMS, there's also a Caring and Sharing food drive. And winter sports has begun at BCMS. And our No Shave November fundraising topped our $3,000 last year by exceeding $4,000 being raised. And BCMS will be
Well, BCMS will be having an ugly sweater day on December 21st, and our 6th grade concert was last night, and they were really good, and our 7th and 8th grade concerts are also coming up, and December 15th, we'll have our next character lunch celebrating student nominated by the Keats, and we look forward to celebrating students.
Thank you.
That reminds me, I meant to shout out the sixth grade concert. Sorry, I'm totally going out of order. But I was so impressed the difference between fifth grade and sixth grade and how much work these kids put in already in less than a half a year. It was phenomenal, standing room only.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then I think we have some friends from Hamagrail here to talk to us tonight.
Good afternoon. I'm Penny.
Burke. I'm Kieran Meyer.
I'm Jacob Heiss.
I'm Ava Young. I'm Shannon Halleck.
I'm Fisher Coleman.
I'm Eliana Deeb.
I'm Mr. Knox. Before I toss it to them, because they're really the show tonight, a big goal of ours this year has been to empower our fifth graders to truly take on a leadership role in our building, not just for their own leadership and their own growth as humans, but really to cultivate a culture in our building of leadership. So we're excited for them to share some things they've been doing in the building this year. And with that, I'll take it away. I'll give it away to Penny.
As a leader, I feel accomplished.
I feel like a role model and that I did something to help my school.
As a leader, I feel responsible.
This year, we have taken an active role of leading all school assemblies. Each month, a group of fifth grade students take pictures of things happening around the school and create a slideshow that we show at our assemblies.
We also lead the assemblies each month. We do the morning announcements, lead the school with our new motto, learn, laugh, grow together, and finish the assembly with a mindful minute. Each day we have several leadership opportunities in the morning. Each class rotates who raises and lowers the flag outside. The American Legion came to our school and showed us how to properly fold the flag. We also do the morning announcements each day. As a group, we update a Google Slide presentation that announces the pledge, birthdays, lunch, and joke of the day. Today's joke was, what do you call a kind of math? What kind of math do snowy owls like? Algebra. This year, we are taking a leading role in assuring that composting is happening properly in the cafeteria. Mr. Warford from the middle school came and talked to us about the importance of composting and assuring that there are no contaminants in the compost bin.
Social leadership is a big part of what we are actively involved in each and every day. Just recently, we helped the community by taping off booths for the craft fair and helping load a van of gifts for the Unity Home. Each week, we connect with our kindergarten and first grade buddy classes, and just last week, we started a coffee cart to help with socialization.
We hope that you feel the sense of togetherness when you walked into our building because we worked to learn, laugh, grow together.
Thank you, guys. Do you guys want to come up here for a second? If anybody wants a pin, I have pins for you. Thanks for coming.
How do you take your coffee?
And I love the shirts. I think some of the board members want shirts.
They do. Maybe Mr. Knox can hook them up.
Thank you, guys. Mr. Knox, I think some of the board members are envious of the T-shirts. I'm just putting it out there. Thank you, guys. You are certainly welcome to stay, but if our fifth grade friends would like to leave because they have things to do or homework, that is also fine. Next on our agenda this evening is our presentation on the K-12 library program by a whole bunch of people, so I'm not going to list everybody. And just as a reminder, if everyone can hold their questions until the end.
Well, they are a hard act to follow. We're going to try to be just as exciting as them. I'm Erin Cheevers. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for the school district, and I also supervise the librarians in all of the buildings. And I have a few of them here tonight, so I'll just introduce them really quickly. I have Christy from the high school, Kaylee from Hammergrill, Chrissy from Slingerlands, Monica from Eagle, and Sylvia from the middle school. So we're going to take a little bit of time to just share some of the highlights of the programs at each level and some of the data that's associated with it. So far this year, as a department, we've been working on looking at the curriculum that we have and the updates that we need to make. And one of the things that we recently did is updated our mission statement. And so our goal is to empower all students with information literacy, technology skills, and a lifelong appreciation for literature in order to nurture a love of learning, critical thinking, and creativity. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kaylee, and she's going to tell you what actually happens in the library.
So in our 21st century libraries, our students learn through lessons and experiences that foster their skills in both traditional literacies as well as new literacies. We support their library skills through read-alouds and lessons in access and organization within the library. We also work on their digital literacy skills through research and digital citizenship lessons. Because we value the creativity, collaboration, and critical thinking that is so important to our students, students experience engaging and well-rounded library experiences from K all the way through 12. Thank you.
Okay. Our students' experiences in our elementary libraries are rooted in child-centered, holistic approach meant to ensure that each child knows that they are welcome, seen, and encouraged to grow and explore within that library setting. An elementary student will typically come in and hear a story or a mini lesson with targeted traditional or digital literacy skills, after which they have an opportunity to respond to that day's content through various methods that support all learners, including traditional writing or drawing, hands-on activities, and collaboration with peers.
Students practice navigating the library with the freedom to choose books with the support of their librarian, cementing their perception of themselves as a reader. In our diverse and representative collection, students of all backgrounds and reading levels can both see themselves and have a view into the lives of others and explore topics of interest. These experiences in our district's elementary libraries foster a child's innate curiosity and support them on their path to lifelong learning and exploration.
Hi. In the past 3.5 years, the middle school library has been evolving. During the first year of the pandemic, I was presented with the task of teaching library skills to our 6th grade students, as in all of them, without the benefit of a district-adopted curriculum. It was wildly challenging, yet despite there being 17 sections and over 300 students, it was one of the most inspiring and rewarding years of my career. Since the middle school LMC reopened in September 2020, it has been a lunchroom, a large group instruction space, a rehearsal space for our music program, and briefly, a semi-functioning library. During the times when I've been without a space to accommodate students, I've pushed into classes, primarily in ELA and social studies, with my goal being to see every class and grade at a minimum of once a month. In addition to introducing students to contemporary and canonized literature and nonfiction texts, I've led instruction to teach literacy and research skills across the disciplines. Along with student volunteers, we spent 2 years unpacking and organizing the boxes of books which had been hastily packed in August of 2020. It was a huge job and one that was made null as we only had to repack them 9 months later as the LMC became a construction zone. When space is available, we do an author visit like last year. And hopefully again in early 2020, we'll have an author here as well. In spring this year, we had Phil Bildner, an author who was featured on page 2 in the November 26th Sunday New York Times Arts and Leisure section as our guest. He presented to our entire 8th grade class, enjoyed lunch with interested students, and also spoke to a smaller group with a focus on sports. I'm looking forward to welcoming a Hudson Valley graphic novelist in March. The new LMC has an anticipated opening date of January 17th. It will provide an environment conducive to reading, research, class instruction, and group activities. All of this is wonderful, and I'm looking forward to witnessing our students' excitement when they finally have access to a new facility. However, I do have concerns. There are aspects of the design which don't seem to prioritize or support the LMC and its stated mission. Attempts to present concerns to decision makers have been generally unsuccessful. While the space promises to be beautiful and modern, the capacity of a single librarian to adequately maintain an awareness of the occupancy and supervise the space, provide instruction to students, continue curating the collection, and assist and plan with faculty is questionable. In conclusion, characteristics of an exemplary library program include a well-planned and stocked facility, adequate professional staffing, and an instructional framework and means of delivery. I sincerely hope all these elements will be present in the new BCMS LMC. Thank you.
I'm here to talk about the high school library. So I'm one of 2 librarians at the high school. Justine Nigro is our other high school librarian, and we have been lucky enough to go through our renovation. We opened in 2020 to promptly close 6 weeks later. We were closed the following year, but now we are up and running. And if you have been lucky enough to come into our space, it is a welcoming, wonderful environment. We have distinct sections in the library. We have the front, which is for collaboration and working together. If you come in at any time during the day, students are chatting, they are playing chess, they are working on puzzles, they are playing card games. They are genuinely enjoying each other. If you go into the back of the LMC, that is where we have students that are still working together, but that is more of an environment where you are quiet and you are studying. We have carols for those who want to work independently, and we do have the tables where they're working quietly together for group work. We also have a classroom where we provide instruction to classes that come down, mainly ELA and social studies, and we also have a makerspace, and our makerspace is fabulous. We have a 3D printer in there that we're currently working with. We have a Cricut, we have a heat press, we have all of these materials that students can come in and they can tinker and play with, and we help them by guiding instruction. We do monthly maker meetings to work with these students to show them what we have available. So during that time when they want to come in during a free period or a study hall, they can work with it.
Okay.
So now we've highlighted what we're doing at each of the levels, and now we want to take a look at some of the data that we have of our collection, our physical and ebook collection for the entire district. So Christy also has a special role in the district where she manages the system. So I'm going to stand with her as she does this.
Yeah, so I'm also lucky enough to work with Destiny, which is our online catalog and our databases, and I manage that with the help of BOCES in our district. So we are constantly looking at our statistics, circulation, and trying to see where we can improve as librarians in our collection. So looking up here, this is for our entire district. So it's showing you our physical collection, which is books that we have in hand, and also our digital collection. So we are 77% physical, and we are, wow, that is tinier than I thought. Okay, 23% digital. Now, our digital collection is books that we purchase to put into our Advantage Overdrive account. So with Overdrive, we have Sora. Sora is the school library equivalent of Libby for the public library, and that's how we access our ebooks for our students. We are also part of a BOCES consortium where we do subscribe and access BOCES titles as well. But those titles that are not in this number, because those are shared across all of the schools that are in Capital Region BOCES. So we didn't include that. Oh, and there's one more thing. It also doesn't include our overlap of titles. So if we have one that is a copy we have physical, and one that we also have digital. So, oh, and one other thing. We do have with our ebooks where in Sora, you can add the public library as well. So our students not only have access to the books that we purchase for them, the books that BOCES purchases for them, but also public library books as well, which is very neat. So our physical collection, as you can see, it is around even. We're about 50%, with almost 50-50 with fiction and nonfiction. So this is very interesting. So the American Library Association recommends that you have between 15 to 20 books on hand for students. We use some data from similar districts to see where we stood in terms of this. And as you can see, we are in orange. And if you look towards the elementary schools, you can see that we are doing very well in terms of hitting that 15 to 20 mark. Some of those elementary schools at the other districts, you can see their numbers very high. Sometimes that means maybe they need to weed their collection a little bit too. For us at the middle school and high school, we have gone through renovations. And when you go through a renovation, we really took that time to look at our collection, weed through what was there, and decide what we wanted to keep. Because we really want our collection to be current. So that's why our number is so low at 7 per student. And building back our collection will take time. That is not something that happens overnight. It's something that we are working on. So that's why our number looks a little bit lower than other schools. As I was saying, we're working very hard on having a publication age that is a newer, more current collection. So our numbers here show that our range of titles in the 2010 to 2019, we have a very high number of books from that publication range. And if you look for the range from 2020 to 2023, we're doing a great job in purchasing books that have been published recently to try to keep it up to date. You will find we do have outliers, and that could be either those are books that need to be weeded, or those are classics, or they're award winners that may have an early publication date, but are still books that are in physically good condition that we'd like to keep. So weeding is something as a district that we make sure that we cover as much as we possibly can. And this is an ongoing process for us. So as you can see with our publication years, that in 2019, the age of our collection was older, but with weeding and adding newer books. Now in 2023, our publication year is more current. One of our district goals also is making sure that our collection is diverse. So we want to support an environment that values and promotes diversity, equity, inclusion. Across our district, 38% of that physical collection does represent those values. And same thing with our social and emotional learning collection. Supports the skills to be emotionally intelligent, establish relationships, and make responsible choices. So this is, every time we look at books and purchasing books, we can look at different resources and see which of these goals that it hits.
This is a new data point within Destiny. When we did curriculum last cycle, it didn't exist, and it does now. And we also did this comparison for where we stand with similar districts, and they're around 30%. So we are a little bit higher for the average percentage of books in our physical collection for this.
And here are our circulation statistics. You can see that in 2018-19, we were higher, and then we dipped during the pandemic. It is actually impressive that with a lot of our libraries either closed or the elementary librarians on carts, that the circulation statistics were still that high. So that's a props to the elementary librarians. We are back up and high for 21, 22, and 22, 23. You will see that our ebook is not as high as our physical books. I do ask a lot of students, and when they come in for a book and a book is currently out, I'll say, hey, well, we have it on ebook. And I do get a lot of students that are just like, I'm on my computer all day. I still just love having a physical book. And I'm like, I agree, I get it. I do also want to point out that for circulation statistics, you will find that at the elementary schools, you have a much higher rate of circulation. They come in weekly for library classes. They're taking out between 2 to 4 books at a time. Sometimes they come back during the week to get more. Where at the high school, we have a lot of students who are reading outside of class. And so for them, taking a book, they're going to have it for longer. So that really influences our circulation statistics at each building. So that's why here we used it for the district. And as librarians, we also manage our databases because a lot of our nonfiction, especially at the high school, we promote through our databases and finding our information. So we subscribe to all of these databases listed above, and at the elementary school, they love Pebble Go, and at the high school, we are big fans of our Gale databases. You'll see that for our current databases compared to our projected databases, projected is much lower. The reason is because we have been lucky enough for 20 years, New York State has been a reciprocant of the Novel NY grant, and that gives about 20 databases to our district for free every year. Unfortunately, that grant is no longer going to be after this year, so those databases will not be free to us anymore. So we are looking into whether or not we like to purchase these databases to add them to what we currently have. But every year, we do review all of our databases. We go through our statistics, we talk to teachers, we see, are these databases still being used? Are they still relevant to what we need as a district? So in the upcoming months, we'll be reviewing all of those that are going away and seeing if that's something we'll add to our roster for next year.
So this is a direct rollover from current to projected. It's not, and it would be, to keep exactly what we have, it's about a $20,000 cost to cover. But like Christy said, we probably will absolutely buy some of those databases, but maybe we won't buy some of the other ones, or maybe we'll buy them all. But we're going to look at usage, and we're going to talk to teachers before we make that decision, and we come back to you in a month or two. And that's all we had. So if you have any questions for any of us.
First, I just wanted to say thank you to all of you for taking the time tonight to come out and talk to us. I definitely appreciate it. And I really appreciate what our libraries do for our schools. I know for all of my kids, they've been a safe place. One question I had, and I'm not sure if it's something you can speak to easily, but I'm just curious about how you, when you talk about building out the collection, particularly at the middle school and the high school where it's kind of dropped, like how do you do that? What kinds of things do you look at in terms of what books to acquire?
We subscribe to some professional journals like School Library Journal and Book List. We read reviews, see what has been well reviewed. Often, particularly in the kind of times that we're living in when there are so many book challenges and people questioning collections, we usually make sure that we have positive reviews of books that may potentially cause a problem. We go to meetings. I belong to BOCES, monthly meetings with all the Capital District librarians, and we talk about new books. Conferences, when we have an opportunity to go to them. It's not just going through a catalog. There's quite a thought process to it. And then getting the books that we want has been a challenge over the last couple of years, with vendors not having stock and going through different channels. So collection development and enhancement is a time-consuming but really important part of our jobs.
I have to say, I look at a lot of Instagram and Bookstagram. I'm on there all the time. I love it. There's such great recommendations out there for YA books. And I also listen to what the kids say. The kids come in and they're like, hey, do you have this book? This book is great. I'm like, oh, let me look into it, see if I can get it for you. So we do. We have a lot of talking to each other, a lot of listening to the kids, and a lot of stuff that's on social media. So, yeah.
Thank you. Other questions? Ewan?
Thanks, folks. Books have been a central part of my life. I know they're part of my kids' lives. I thank you for supporting our students with that. So when I saw the presentation ahead of time, right, I saw those high school, middle school stats, and I was a little terrified. Am I to hear that there's no issue here, that there is funding to replace these and rebuild these collections adequately?
We have a book budget every year, so there's funding for books.
Okay.
So.
I wanted to give particular thanks to Sylvia for being willing to come and say, not always just everything's happy dancy, but here are some possible issues. Let's say I handed you $10 million and said, hey, make the middle school library perfect. What would the first couple of things be you'd want to change?
Staffing.
Just more staff?
Yeah, when I started in the district almost 20 years ago, every building had a full-time librarian. The high school had 2 full-time librarians. The middle school had 2 full-time librarians. They had, both the middle school and the high school had a full-time secretary and a full-time clerk. The high school had more supervisory staff beyond that. And at this point, the middle school is 1 librarian. That's it. When I'm in the new space, I should have a clerical assistant, but right now, because I'm in room 205, it just would be redundant. It wouldn't make any sense. But, I mean, it'll be potentially 2 people.
Okay. I have one more question.
Hold on, let me just make sure. Catherine, did you have a question, or? Go ahead.
So last thing, I especially appreciate the commentary on supporting diversity and a variety of perspectives and so on. As you say, particularly when there are attempts to ban books and restrict what students can read or are exposed to, I'm hoping, and I'm guessing this probably happens, that you guys can take the opportunities, when a book is attempted to be banned someplace, to have that book available and say, hey, this is what people think you shouldn't read. You should go read it. It's kind of subversive, because I think that's a great way to support that difference of perspectives that the students really need. So I'm guessing that's already in place, but if not, let's do that more.
We have a couple English teachers who during Banned Books
Book
Week,
Week,
they
yeah.
call down and we make a display and they send their kids down and, we'll go up to the classroom and talk about why this was banned, and then there's a whole conversation that revolves around those books, so yes.
When Mouse came under attack, I tried to buy copies for all my look, and I couldn't buy it because everyone had gone down the same thing. That was super cool.
Yeah.
So thanks.
Catherine?
First of all, thank you. I just want to echo my thanks and support. My kids' library is one of their favorite times of the week. It's you all work magic with your stories and your open hearts and your open spaces, and so thank you from the bottom of my heart. A couple of questions on some of the technical aspects. As I was listening to the discussion on databases, I was actually wondering, have we ever considered, or do we have the ability to open up the licenses so that members of the school community outside of the student body could access some of those databases as well? Is that something that we've ever explored? Is that something that we could explore?
We've never talked about it, but we probably could. I know the public library also does have access to all of the
they
databases.
the same
too.
ones?
Yeah,
Oh,
so
okay.
sometimes they have a few, there might be a couple that we have that they don't, or vice versa, but yeah, they do have most of
I
them.
was thinking, I think otherwise it would be redundant, I think.
Well,
is-
yeah, no, if it's the same, if it is literally the same data set, then yeah, there's no point. But to the extent that maybe if we have something different, that could be cool to explore, to just put in there for consideration. When you were talking about, oh boy, you used the name of the app for e-reading.
Sora?
Sora, thank you. Is that accessible to students on devices aside from their Chromebooks? Yeah, cool.
Yes, there's a app for iPad, iOS, Android, all that.
This is great. I'm getting a lot of good information. Thank you. And then on the staffing question, do we currently have librarians in every school?
Yes, there is one librarian in all buildings except for the high school. They have 2, and all buildings also have clerical.
Cool. And are they full? They're not full. We don't have full-time in every building right now, right?
Almost every building, if at least half-time.
At least half-time. Cool. Those were my 3 questions. Thank you.
And I think Meredith had a.
Just a quick question. Again, thank you for all the work you do. I know it's been a really challenging couple of years, so I just wanted to echo my thanks. Regarding the Sora, you mentioned that students have access to the public library through that, but you were talking about it in terms of nonfiction. Do they have access to everything in the public library?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So, yeah, you just, so when you're on Sora, it says Add Public Library, and then you can just add Bethlehem Public Library, and it's access to their entire collection. The great thing is, though, if they're logged in their elementary school, it only gives the things that are labeled for elementary level students.
Okay, that's great to know. And then regarding the staffing question Catherine brought up, I understand that at some elementary schools, we only have librarians, they're part-time. Is the library itself open if students want to come in and return a book and pick out another book? If a librarian is not there that day, do they have access to the library?
Yes, the clerical that's assigned to the library is, but it's not all day, but when the clerical is there, typically they try in the morning because kids like to return books in the morning to be there.
Okay.
So it just depends on the schedule of the clerical
Okay.
for that day.
Do we feel as though we have adequate staffing for the elementary libraries? Or do you think that we could use more staffing in order to have someone there full-time every day?
I think that we have enough staffing to cover the sections of all of the libraries that we're offering. And because some schools have different levels of sections, in order to keep the positions, I think that we do that by traveling some of the librarians. So I think that they could they use more time? Everybody, absolutely, 100%. They have hard jobs, and these staff work incredibly hard, and I think that, they value any support that can be given to them.
Thank you.
Yes.
Bob, I think you had questions.
So I'll add my thanks as well and reiterate my thanks to you for all the critical things you do for the school. Holly had asked a little bit about building up the book collection. I'd like to ask about the opposite side of that coin. You talked about the weeding process. Conceptually, I can certainly understand the need to curate the collection. Putting aside, I suppose, restrictions in the physical plant and just how much space you have, what impulse would there to be to get rid of books that, even if they're not used that much? Just to leave them there.
Yeah, so I meant to actually say that in the weeding slide, and then I forgot. But we look at different things with our statistics. We look at circulation statistics. Has this been checked out? We look at the relevance of the information in the book. Is this something that is not current anymore? And we look at, and the language in the book, they said, yeah, is the language current? And then also look at the condition of the book. A kid's not going to take out a book that's kind of not looking so great. Is there anything else you want to add to that? Especially the elementary level, yeah.
It's a living collection, so it's alive. It needs to be, the purpose is for it to go out and circulate as often as possible. At the elementary level, we often weed books for wear. A kindergarten kid can really do something to books once it's our circulation stats are so high that the frequency with which a book goes out wears it over time. So many of our books that are weeded are because of damage and wear, because it was loved so well.
Right.
So that would be another impulse to weed a book.
And one other thing that we haven't talked about is a print reference collection, which we don't maintain anymore. So, we weeded an awful lot of our print reference because students get that access to those sort of materials digitally now, where they're updated more frequently. So, we had quite a collection of atlas at the middle school that just collected dust for years, because kids go on Google Maps. They're not using an atlas anymore. So there's that sort of thing as well.
And now that you brought up the digital, I do have one more question. You talked about the circulation and how sometimes the high school students kept books out longer because they're reading outside. For the e-books, and this is just a basic ignorance on my part, can more than one person have e-books at a time, or is that just out to one person as well?
It's one person. So it's the same thing. So it's one book, one usage. We can purchase multi-licenses. The books that we do purchase are one copy, one student. And the same thing, it's a 3-week checkout, and then it's automatically returned. So, yeah.
But digital reference books
That's different.
are different.
Okay.
So multiple users, instead of you buying, a print copy of something and spending $60 for this print reference material. You pay $100 and you have a digital version of it that can be used simultaneously by unlimited users, and they can have access to it remotely. They don't have to be in your library to use it.
And those print reference books that you're referencing, you're talking about, that's reflected in the physical books in the library. In other words, that was part of the sort of the cull, the weeding, so that the information is still available. So maybe those numbers aren't quite so stark as they might appear on the graph. Okay.
One other thing I want to talk about is the cost of ebooks. The cost of ebooks is actually very, very high, where if we go on to Amazon, the cost of a hardcover book is between $15 to $18. For that same book to be purchased on ebook, it is between $50 to $60, especially for a brand new title. If you'd like that on audio, it's around $90. So we are very selective in what we do purchase with ebooks because it's a very high cost for those, unfortunately.
Well, I prefer the physical, so go
Yeah.
with that.
And one of the other ways that they market these digital books is that you don't actually purchase it and own it. They sell them with metered access, so you get to have 26 checkouts and then it disappears from your collection. Or the worst one is you get to have it in your collection for a designated period of time, like it's yours for a year or for 2 years. And regardless of how many times it gets checked out or not, it disappears at the end of that period of time.
I guess, last one for me, then, is it the preference of the students that would steer the library towards ebooks as opposed to physical books, given the fact that you don't own them outright and they're more expensive? Is it the kids like to look at the ebooks better? Is that something that drives that?
Yeah, go ahead. Yep, absolutely.
So I think there's also something to be said for different types of accessibility, so you can increase the text, you can use some of them that we buy or read along, so that might, support students with different needs. But yeah, speak to that.
No, absolutely. If the students, I'd like to have them available for the students, so that is something that I want to make sure that they do have access to. But it is a hard line of deciding where the budget money is going to go. Do I want to put that much money into purchasing an ebook? So I do look to see, does BOCES have a copy? Because if we are getting access to the BOCES catalog through our consortium, maybe I can get BOCES to buy it. And then if our kids are checking it out a lot, then I'll use the money to buy an extra copy for us that's only for Bethlehem kids. So I'm constantly looking at our circulation statistics to see how to best use our money.
Thank you.
Willow, did you have a
Yeah,
question?
my only question wasn't so much about the curriculum, but about the middle school project itself and where we are in terms of completion of that. I don't remember
It's supposed to
the
open
projected timeline.
Mid-January. That's the slated date, January 15, 17, something.
Okay.
17.
And you had another question?
Yeah, I was just curious, I guess, thinking about this stuff. How much, if any, of the collection is not in English?
Okay, so I can look into actual numbers for you, but I do know at the high school we do have a Spanish collection. We also have a Spanish picture book collection, and then we have books in Russian. So this is Gina. Gina works for BOCES, and she has to help me catalog these books. And finding cataloging for books in Russian is a little bit of a challenge. So I think it was Russian. I don't know if I got one in Ukrainian, but the finding to purchase those books is where I'm actually having trouble. So the Spanish books are easy to find copies of and purchase, but I worked with the ELL teacher to see what they needed to reflect the languages that are in our ELL classroom. So we do have a wish list going, now just trying to find a place to purchase those books. But it is something that we are working on at the high school at least, so.
And some of the digital resources that we get actually translate into multiple languages. So that makes them advantageous for our collections as well.
A recent have an ebook, okay.
Any other questions? Thank you again to everybody for coming and presenting to us tonight. Next on our agenda is our recognition of public comment on an agenda item. If we have any visitors who'd like to address the board on an agenda item, now is the time to come to the microphone. Item 6, action items. A, finance action items. It is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approve the following finance action items 1 through 3.
So moved.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries. B, professional personnel action items. It is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approve the following professional personnel action items 1 through 9.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries. C, support personnel action items. It is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approve the following support staff action items 1 through 20.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries. D, other action items. It is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approve the following action items 1 through 3.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion?
Yes. So I mentioned earlier, one of the policies, this is the sweatshop free policy, and if you happen to have read this, you'll see it's in fact being diminished. And the issue for that is kind of interesting. So it turns out we may not have been following this policy and may in fact find it impossible to follow as written. So for some things like athletic apparel, it is apparently impossible to get any supplier to certify that their stuff is sweatshop free. So I'm sad that the policy is being made less strong, but this appears to be a thing where we can't actually follow the previously instantiated policy, which, I don't want anyone to think out there, hey, the board decided we really like sweatshops and we'd like to support them more. That's definitely not the case. So it sucks, frankly.
Correct. We don't want to get rid of the aspirational goal.
Yeah, quite.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries. Item 7, recognition of public comment on a non-agenda item. If we have any visitors who would like to address the board on a non-agenda item, now is the time to come to the microphone. And if you could please state your name.
Hi, I'm Flint, and I'm with the high school, but I believe this is an agenda item. It's under Other Policies D. Policy number 5520.
Name and gender pronouns?
Yeah.
It's okay. If you would like to, it's okay. If you have a comment to make.
I don't know how the process works. Are you going to speak on it first?
No, we've voted on it, but when you have public comment, we can hear what you say. We won't have a conversation back and forth, but we would love to hear what you have to say.
So the policy was voted on, and then today is the first reading? Does that mean that during the executive hours you voted on it?
So the way the policy votes work, we have a first read and a second read of the policy. So it will be on the agenda again at our next meeting for the second read, and then we'll vote on it again at that time.
So does that mean that you voted on it at least one time already, or there's a final vote after both reads?
We voted on it tonight for the first read. We'll vote on a second reading of it at the next meeting.
So just 1 moment ago, we voted to pass it through to the next vote. But we can accept any comments on it before that time.
Oh, okay.
If you have thoughts, we would love to hear what you have to say.
So you're here at the perfect time.
Hi, I'm Flint's mom. I'm Julie Lawrence, and I think we weren't quite sure what the process was, but I think we just wanted to be here in great support of you opening up this process, and say that it's meant a lot to our family to be able to acknowledge the diversity in our family, and that it has made a big difference. We came to the school district. This is our first fall here, and we came from a school environment where some of these processes were already there. And I want to say this in a constructive way, not in a we're here to complain way, but not having some of this in place actually made the transition in a little bit more bumpy. And so we, and, you know, we can give specific examples, but I think mainly we just wanted to be here physically present saying thank you for looking at this. And I think our family is very supportive. If you want even like nuances of things that make a difference and why it actually does make a difference to comfort in school, with peers, with teachers, just kind of feeling like you can show up as yourself, we're really happy to support. So that's what I wanted to say as a mom. And anything else you want to say is great. And I'm proud of my kid for being here.
Yeah, and from the standpoint of kind of where I notice maybe shortcomings in the policy, it's interesting to me as someone who's really interested in technology that how some of the aspects of this policy have revealed like little flaws with the integration of technology of like Aspen and student records and rosters. For example, like the Aspen system is very old-fashioned, and in the printing of student IDs, the fact is like it generates a new PDF for every single person's student ID, and then that PDF is then printed onto an ID card. And so in just navigating this system, I've both gotten to know like the infrastructure digitally that exists for our school and also perhaps some of the problems. Like there was supposed to be a bus paperless transition that was put on hold for at least a year or more because of someone going on maternity leave and perhaps there not being someone else to take control of that. And as a result, there's actually a lack of integration between the school roster and the information there and the bus roster. And there was supposed to be a student ID functionality with the scanning. I also think that since a lot of this school's systems are heavily reliant on the time clock aspect, even Mr. Domel was unaware that it was not integrated with Aspen, that, you know, if there were to be a sort of text system that summons the information from the Aspen portal, there's actually a kind of breakdown there because of, with respect to like non-legal name, it's like a new column added in the Aspen system, but that's not, but the code really isn't there to do that. Anyways, I don't want to get into the nuances, but just like you know, I think it's really important that this change be made because even though there exists the column on Aspen for your teachers, a lot of student life doesn't really cross over to that because of, you know, students who will just manually input your name for like dance tickets, and they'll just search the entire database and they'll just have access to everything that teachers do, or substitutes, or signing into the library, checking out a book. I know that I've been hesitant, for example, to enter the library just as a result of the maybe antiquated or, well, just the very simple time clock interface that doesn't really mirror the changes that have been made on the back end for the website. So,
Which just, can I just, to be clear, results in being misgendered? Is that?
Oh, well, not in terms of the way that students interact with me, but the fact that for any substitutes calling attendance or for like signing into the counseling center and the library, it has basically a log, and like it's very like public and stuff like that, and so there could be information that for the like tech system, it's very on lock, only accessible to teachers or whatever, but there are some places where it is actually very, very adjacent to the entire student public, and so it's like this information that is supposed to be very or that's supposed to be more hidden is necessary to be like, you have to, yeah. What? Should I stop talking?
No, not at all. Is this, I mean, are we talking about dead names, that kind of thing, being available to everyone?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And just like like, just a, you know, a Google spreadsheet of every single
Yeah.
person's, like, their entire, all their information on Aspen being given to like a few members of the student council to handle all of the dance purchase, or dance ticket purchases of every single member in the student body, like, yeah.
So my mom's statement as a summary is, you know, going through something as significant as changing name and gender is a major task, and it represents a really major commitment to a new identity. And that's hard enough to make the transition once, but to have to revisit it daily on every, not knowing which sign-in place you go to, who you're going to be recognized as, it really is in the way of progressive moving forward, and just being able to be who you are when you come into the building or come into the community. So I think that's really, I think all of the nuances, and Flint has an extraordinary amount of detail that, you know, may be helpful offline, but I think the basic takeaway is, as you move forward with the policy, please think about it being, you know, all the ways in which this has to permeate throughout the community for it to really work.
Thank you for sharing that feedback with us.
Thank you.
And you probably know this, but there is a board email address, so details, you know, feel free to send a 30-page email with all that stuff in it.
Future meetings and events. On December 11th at 5:30, there's a Facilities Committee meeting. On December 12th at 5:30, there's an Audit Committee meeting. Do you know yet whether you're able to attend? Because if you're
90%, sure.
Okay, if for some reason you can't, let me know, because then I can try to sub in. And then our next regular board meeting is on December 20th, anticipating that there'll be executive session at 6 and then reconvening to public session at 7. And that is would be our last meeting of 2023. We do need to go back into executive session to discuss a personnel and contractual matter. Could I have a motion to do so?
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. All right. So we're going to go back into executive session, but all of the PIG students, come on up and make sure you sign out.
Are you with the pig? You don't have to sign it.